with Nancy Haynes. I can see we're buffering on LinkedIn, and I'm just going to keep going, Nancy, because I don't know when we're going to be actually live. So I'm just going to trust the system and let it come to life. Welcome back, everybody. My name is Miss V, otherwise known as Maria Vitoratos, and I am here really excited to be joined by an incredible colleague, friend, and just the most iconic public speaker I have come across ever. Nancy Haynes is the leadership identity coach. Nancy, I'm just going to look at what you have written here on LinkedIn. You call yourself the leadership identity coach, but what I love, and now I've seen you live in person, so I know that you are larger than life when you're on that stage. Anyone in the room can feel your energy. But what you do is that you focus on a shift that many high achieving professionals don't realize they need to make. And with so many questions that I definitely want to ask you, I thought let's start there. What do you define as the shift that most professionals don't know they need? And I know that's a big question, and I usually traditionally start with the journey, which is what I told you we do before I press record. But you know me, I want to go big and get everyone's attention, and then we'll go backwards. So what does that mean for a professional, and how do they know they need to work with a confidence coach?
Do you know what? The main thing that I think is a common denominator over the years, and as you said it, I started with the confidence coach, and the reason I shifted into leadership identity is because the work over the years got deeper and deeper. It was like I want to like dissect everything and understand it. And the question that you have is such a big question, but the
Mm,
main thing is people don't even realize that they have gone through their journey from external validation of like somebody said you did a good job, and then all of a sudden you're just like, oh, you got a little like dopamine fix, and then you're going and you're continuing. And then what you don't realize is along the way you have now programmed yourself to say, unless I do good or unless I do this, I'm not good enough. And that is subconscious, it's not conscious, it just happens over the years. And I feel like a lot of leaders have done that, and now that becomes the it factor, the external validation, the how many connections you have on LinkedIn, the likes, the network. It becomes this thing where the shift is when you shift it internal and you give yourself that internal authority to be in that position with no conditions.
I love that. And I love that you mentioned those different things. One you said was the likes on LinkedIn as an example, that the I guess the nuggets that are telling a professional you're being seen, that visibility factor. And I spoke with Jack Megid on, I think it was Thursday. Gosh, that feels like a long time ago now. We talked about people using LinkedIn to get that feel good factor. Would you say that that feel good factor is actually hindering a leader's performance, or is it that kind of juice they need to push the dial?
For me personally, having been there myself, so this is like speaking of experience, you your intention becomes, what can I say or what can I do to get the most likes or to get what's trending, and that becomes your like the beginning. Whereas that isn't it, because it's not, again, it's not you, you're not doing it from what's like in the heart, like what do I really feel is important and what do I really want to share today. And then that becomes, for me, that becomes your authentic superpower, because we each have it. That authentic superpower, it dictates you, like that's how you show up, versus you're chasing the extra likes and you're seeing, oh my gosh, okay, let's talk about, for example, let's talk about confidence in relationships, but actually that's not really what I want to talk about, but I'm going to do it because I know that it gets likes and it gets visibility and whatever that
Mm-hmm.
is. You lose. you lose at the end of the day, because that, again, you're chipping away at the authentic version of you, that it should be the core of your messaging. That should be the core of your messaging. And I will say this for public speakers, for coaches, for teachers, for leaders, every single person, when you start doing things that way, other people feel it. They can feel it right away when it's like, that message is like, it doesn't land 100%, or you're like, they're trying hard. They're trying too hard because they want to be this one thing that technically in heart and in their authentic core, they're not.
Okay, I love that. All right, now that we went through, let's go backwards just so that we kind of set the context. Nancy, you started your career in HR, and suddenly you went from HR, you moved country, you probably moved again, and you pivoted in your career. Where did you find your own confidence to go from working for someone to working for yourself?
Oh, that's a great question. I feel like I got put in like the worst case scenario, where if you live in like for myself in LA, I had all my network. So if I would have done the switch in LA, it would have been much different to go from human resources to then at that point, confidence coaching. If I would have done that there, it would have been different because I have a network. It's almost like you have like a little bit of a safety net of like, okay, but I know people here and I know I can reach out for, connections. Because I did the shift at the exact same time that I did the move to Dubai, that humbled me. That humbled me because I was like, I already know what to do. I've grown a business, like the HR business, for 8 years I had it. It was at the peak of its success. And I was like, oh, I got this. I can do this. It's no big deal. And that does not happen. It was totally different. And I feel like that breakdown of identity was what made me catapult forward, because I thought I was this person, this type of businessman. And then when I broke all that and I had nothing familiar, nowhere around was familiar. I was alone in that silence. And it was like, really, like, who am I then? Who am I really without all of that? Which again goes back to the external validation. Whereas I'm in this place alone, what do I do? And that's what started to then help me build my own self, where I'm like, okay, so if I really believe in myself, if I really believe in my message, what am I going to do? And that was very hard for me to answer, because I was like, what if I fail? Like, what if I don't do what I really want to do? And it was hard. It was very, very difficult. But that helped me truly connect the dots with my confidence was built from me being me, my authenticity. I was trying to be this other person when I first started to networking events and showing up as this person who has it all together. And I was like, this isn't me. And I know people feel that. So I said, you know what, who cares? I'm going to show up as me, and whatever happens, happens. And let me tell you, the moment I did that shift of, I know what I'm worth and I know who I am, I'm going to show up as her. That's all I can do. Because all these connections started to happen, and it just started to kind of make sense. And that for me was like the aha moment of this is it. It's simple. It's not so complicated and crazy and intense. But when it's simple, people maybe don't value it as much. They're like, is it though? But let me tell you, show up as your full self with no mask, vulnerabilities exposed. That's hard.
That is really, 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 really hard. Talk to us about how you define confidence, because I think confidence is one of those things that many professionals and students I've worked with, it feels like something they feel they need to learn, or someone will gift it to me, as an example. In my own lived experience, I've been told, you're so confident. And sometimes that was a compliment, and sometimes didn't feel very much like a confident. So I think confidence is a complex term. Understanding what it means is equally complex. How do you define it? And how do you help your clients understand how they should be defining it for themselves?
I say every single person, you have to put the definition on that word because you do, which many of us do. What does a confident person look like on social media? They're outspoken and they're always the light is always on that person. They're loud. They're always talking. They're always having the spotlight. For people who are, like introverts, they might feel a little bit like, oh, I can't do that, so I'm never going to be confident. But that's not the case. The thing is, you have to make that definition for yourself and ask yourself that question. If I could say I am confident today, like in what? And you have to define it in myself, in my career, in my showing up into the world. Like, what does that look like for me? That is going to be very different for every single person because we all have different personalities. The moment you make a definition like, oh, this is what it looks like, you're the person that talks all the time, you're the one that blah blah blah, A B C D E F G, you immediately were generalizing everybody, and that's the problem. That's the problem because you see somebody out, while you're out, and you see that person who's just shining their light as bright as it can be. But to be honest, those are sometimes the people that lack the confidence the most because it's a mask. It's the insecurities that they're like, don't look at this. So I'm going to be as loud as possible and shine the light. But you know what? When you learn to understand yourself, and I've learned for myself, it was being an observer was the most powerful thing for me. It's the silence of just observing the room, understanding. And then when I knew it was my time to speak, that is so much more powerful. That is because it's controlled and you know that and you're staying centered. Whereas there's times where, and I can see it in boardrooms, like when I've been in rooms and I'm like, oh my God, that person is just wanting to be fully validated and accepted because I can see behind the person who's there. And it really frustrates me because I'm like, this is what society has come to, where our kids where they're like, if I don't get into the top school that everybody wants for me, how am I gonna like achieve that? Like they already put themselves they're already behind or they're not good enough. And the thing is, it happens subconsciously. It doesn't happen. All these things are happening subconsciously. And then that child then grows, 10 years later in their career when they get let go and their world tumbling down.
Tell me about, I love that you brought in young people. So I'm going to take a little pivot in our direction. Inside my virtual careers hub, I work with students, high school students, who are trying to navigate career conversations and begin to shape their career decisions before they graduate high school. Many of them look for confidence. They're wanting to feel confident about their choice. One of the most sought out answers is, Miss Fee, how am I going to be confident with my choice? How am I going to know I made the right choice? How would you respond to a young person that is looking for confidence, hoping that they find it somewhere on the journey, and then knowing that confidence for them may not look like confidence for a peer, a teacher? What kind of advice would you give them?
Do you know what? And I say this from example because as you're talking, I'm thinking about myself in those moments when I had to make those choices. I was not who I am today. I'll tell you that right now. I was a person who sat in the front of the room because I didn't want anybody to look at me. And I was so shy. Like anyone who spoke to me, it was overwhelming and I couldn't carry a conversation. So I was a nerd. I was sitting in the front. I didn't like go out and do any of the cool stuff. I was not cool. And now that I think about that girl who did look around her and her environment, and I thought, being the cheerleader, the popular one, that girl who got to do all these cool stuff she was confident. I was not. But do you know what? The main thing that I would give students, the advice would be you have to be okay with making mistakes because
Mm.
that's what's going to help you grow. You're going to put all this pressure on yourself. Is this the right school? Do you know what? For the moment, that might be the right school, but it might not be. And you have to be okay that your journey in life isn't going to be straight up. It's not going to be, I go to the perfect school, I meet the perfect friends, I get married to the right person. Like, life isn't that. It's, you got to be okay with making mistakes. You might make the wrong choice, and that's okay because you're going to learn how to pivot. You're going to learn how to manage your own self of like, how do I grow? What am I learning in this experience and this opportunity, whatever it is? But to me, that would be the biggest one. It's okay to make mistakes.
That's a big one, isn't it? Particularly as students are beginning to make not only their first adult decision, but most likely one of their most financially expensive decisions. And thinking about, feeling like, hey, mom, it's okay. I'll figure it out. I'll pivot through it. That's a challenging one, isn't it? But I do agree. I think the one thing that I always try to help my students understand is when you're making that first choice, you're not making a life forever choice. You're making the first choice. So all you need to do is think about all of the opportunities and make a choice that feels right for you and will give you that entryway into the direction that you want to be going to. With confidence, how would you speak to a parent whose child has come home and said, my teachers are telling me that it's okay if I make mistakes, that I'll pivot. And many parents are worried because what I see from working with them is they're looking at it through the lens of someone who's worked for 3, 4, 5 decades, and they're not looking at it through the lens of a 17-year-old. So they almost want to, help their children forget the messy part. Let's skip that messy part and let's just get you to where I am and get you even better than me. What advice would you give to a professional parent who's trying to help their child navigate a career decision?
The main thing would be you've got to step in their shoes. Can't be your shoes. Your shoes and your story are totally different. You need to be able to get to know your kids, like sit down. What is it that makes you happy? Do you know what? If somebody would have asked me, and I say this to you from the bottom of my heart, I know it wasn't intentional, but like when I wanted to do journalism. It was like my dream. And when I told my mom, the first thing she said is that is not a safe career. You need to find something where you have a desk and is needed to help, and that's it. And when I did HR, it was like, don't get me wrong, I loved it, but it didn't fulfill me. And here I am going, 15 years of experience in HR. All of a sudden, I'm like, it doesn't fulfill me anymore. I'm doing this because this is what I studied. I'm doing this because this is and it was like, I started to do the coaching for free to groups of young girls. I got in touch with a few schools. They said, yes, please come in and do your program for our young girls. I went in and I did it. Maria, I was doing it for free. And I was like, why does this bring me more like fulfillment? And I just feel so energized. Yet in my HR consulting business where I was making great money, but it wasn't fulfilled. Like I didn't feel fulfilled. I was like, I'm just there doing it. But that is something that I think look at us now. Like some of us are pivoting at 40. Like we are pivoting at 40 because we were never given that chance. We weren't given this opportunity to say, do you know what? Let me think about this right now. And for the parents, you have to get to sit and get to know your kids. What makes them happy? What fulfills them? What makes them feel alive? And go from there because you're for the end in sight. But in 10 years and 5 years, they might fully experience something and they say, actually, I want to do this instead. And you have to be okay with that because at the end of the day, we have one life to live.
I love
What do
that. I
you
love
have?
that. I think that's a big reality is you never want your children to look back and think, I wish I could have. But at the same time, as a parent, you're like, there's so many things I could do with all that money. What else can we be doing? Right? It's a hefty amount of an investment. But of course, parents want the best for their children. Nancy, let's go back to the work you do with clients. Who would you say is your ideal client? I'm asking that question because for anyone watching us right now in LinkedIn, we talk about confidence coaching and we talk about feeling confident at work. And what I've seen is it's almost like, okay, that's something for leaders to do because, I'm not a leader, so like, I just have to get my job done. But I know you think differently about that. So who is your ideal client? Or let's rephrase that. What type of professional ideally should be considering building confidence into their already highly skilled character and professional traits?
That's a really great question. And you know what? Just recently, funny enough, one of my youngest now clients, I think she's only like 22, and she had the same thing. She said, why do I have to do this? I'm not like I don't have authority to do anything. I just do the work. And I said, and that itself is the problem. That itself is the problem. The fact that you do not see yourself as a leader, not because you don't have the title, but you have to own that identity of leadership. What are you doing in your work every day that you feel you can impact? Where can you influence and where can you impact? Those are the two that I always ask. That in itself is leadership because you can influence even somebody above you because you feel like you can feel when somebody owns it and that it's an identity shift. It's the moment you own that where you're like, I'm not just doing data entry, where you say, do you know what? I have an impact because I want to look at how we can do this more effectively. That itself is a leader because you're looking at what kind of influence I have and what kind of impact can I do for this organization. And that in itself is what starts the ball rolling because once you have that thing inside of you that says, I want to do more or be more, but I'm too scared or I don't know how. And you're like stuck in this, I'm just this, immediately you're perfect candidate because you already have that there's a little curiosity in you that's saying I wonder what it would be like to feel like that next position or that whatever it may be. And that's all it takes is I wonder what it would be like to be in the CEO, like to be a CEO, even though you're just a data entry. Who cares? That's where it starts because people see that, people notice that. Now, for the people that are already in those positions, even them, I mean, when they're doing presentations, when they're talking to the team, the way that they influence is so important. But for some of them, they never got taught that. So it's just, I tell you what to do, I delegate, and I move on. But at the end of the day, it's the same question. What kind of impact do you want to leave? And what kind of influence do you have? And that in itself is where an organization, the power of that, you can shift an entire organization. Like I've seen it. I've seen it where everybody just shows up, does their work, and leaves. The moment the top gets to that connection of how can I make the biggest difference, because then it filters to everybody else, it shifts completely where people feel like they are truly a part of the organization. The loyalty, the productivity, like everything shifts. I had the chance to work with an organization in Dubai that way, and the difference, like, it made me tear up. And to this day, that lady who ran that entire organization still calls me when she's now moved to other companies because she knows the difference of how it felt to be in those positions. And I just think that is magical because people want to show up. Like people really genuinely want to work and get better and feel better and develop. But when you're not offering that, you're offering people come and do the work and you leave, you're leaving so much on the table.
Okay, now let's navigate into uncomfortable waters. It's often felt at work, rarely spoken out loud, unless it's whispered by either a water machine, a coffee machine, or, you know, out to lunch with colleagues. And that is leaders, former leaders, who don't really like their employees to act confident. How do we, as professionals, or how do you help professionals who are struggling to feel confident because when they act confident, it's not a compliment in the workplace, and actually, it's almost shunned down on by potentially special type of leaders.
Well, let me tell you, that's exactly what happened to me. That's why I was so afraid to be myself, because I created that subconscious program of the moment I am myself, fully showing up and confident, I get dinged for it. And it
Mm-hmm.
was a program that started over and over. But do you know what? Every single time that I did that, I said afterwards, I said I had to leave an organization a few times, because I'm like, if they cannot see the value that I bring here, I am not appreciated at all, to be here every single day, you're chipping away at you are chipping away at your confidence, but you're doing that yourself, because you have to be in a position where, let's say somebody can't leave and they're just stuck in that. But do you know what? At the end of the day, you being yourself has to matter the most. You showing up in your fullest potential and your fullest capability, because then you almost give others the permission to do that. And that in itself is influence.
Okay, now let's navigate into interview day. And I always tell students, particularly university graduates who are, sending out and hoping to get interviews. And they often ask me, Miss V, I just want to get, a job, I want to get experience, and then I'll look to work for a company that aligns more with my values. And I'm like, you're getting that wrong. If, you want to remember that the investment that you're putting in yourself with every organization you work for isn't just about the paycheck. It's really about feeding into your confidence, feeding into your self belief, and feeding into all of these things. And I often say to students, when you're looking to apply for a job, now we're making the assumption that they're able to meet their basic needs, and we're not dealing with that lower end of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So we're looking at the graduate who can pay the bills and is really looking for that first opportunity to build experiences and to move the dial in their career so that they can catapult themselves forward in the future. I'm always telling them, you're not just signing up for a job, you really want to be conscious about the type of employer that you want to be working for, because at the interview, the employer is being really, really particular about the type of candidate that they want to bring in. What type of strategy should a professional, regardless of their age, it could be someone who's mid-career, a new entry, regardless of where they are, what strategy can they use to begin to kind of unfold those little gems in the interview to understand, will confidence be rewarded in this organization, or is confidence something I have to leave at home when I come to work?
The main thing, I think, before anything happens, every single person needs to know what their values are. What do you value the most? Like, so many people, sustainability, growth, blah, 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 blah. If there's things that are really, really important to you and that align with you, you have to come in with that. You have to know all those things before you even come into the room, because it could be so damaging. It could be so damaging on your own self. And it's happened to me. That's why this work becomes so passionate. Like, for me, I feel so passionate about it, because being young, and nobody's told me that if something doesn't feel right, like, you need to be able to walk away from it. Whereas for me, it's like I just have to stay here. Like this is my work, this is my job. I have to do this. Where it was no longer becoming a safe space for me to develop and to grow. It was actually really go fully against my morals and my values. And it was really hard, Maria, because the money was great and the benefits were great. But again, because of my values, and I knew from then what they were, I said, I cannot work like this. Like, I cannot be here every day and I feel sick to my stomach that things are happening where I don't align with that. And I need to learn to walk away. And what that does is you send a signal to your brain to say, I value me, I trust me, and I respect me. The moment you align with that, when you step back out into the world, I promise you, you send out a signal to wherever you go. I've got to feel the same back. I got to get that same thing back. And that energy has to come back. And the times that I've walked away from things where I have been so scared, I'm like, nobody's going to pay for my bills. I'm living in LA. Like, what? The moment I've walked away, whatever reason, the universe just put something right in my place that was like, oh, that's exactly what I needed. But it's a very risky and bold decision to make. But in that risk and in that boldness comes that next thing that you need to get into that next level, next phase, whatever that is for each and every person. But you have to know when to walk away, when your own expectations are not being met. And this is bare minimum expectations, but it truly is your values and your morals when things are going against it. And just recently, like you mentioned earlier, where I'm like, I was in a group and somebody said, who cares? Even if it's not your thing, you just do it, you get exposure. And it just went so against me that I had to leave the room. And I just said, I'm sorry, I can't be in this room when this is going, like, this goes against my values so strongly that I cannot be in this room. And I had to leave. And it's unfortunate because when you know your values that strongly, and I promise you, I went home and I thought, shoot, now I've lost like that group of business people within months. I got called to attend something else and I was like, this is my jam. Like, these are people that are genuinely like, they have integrity, they have honesty, they genuinely have this energy that is really wanting to give back to the world. And it was like, you see what happens when you make that bold step, you get
Mm,
rewarded for it.
I love that. I love so many things you say, Nancy. You know that. As we're just coming to the end of our time together, recently you've completely pivoted out for a while and then you came back. Tell us about what you learned on that journey and how you're a different confidence coach now than you were before.
Oh my gosh, this is a massive one. So I stepped away, and funny enough, I was beating myself up for it because to me, it's like I got to be work, 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 like no rest time. Like, come on, Nancy. And I really was like so down on myself for that, and like beating myself up for it. And I remember because even us coaches need mentors, and the mentor said to me, "Why do you see it as like a stop? Like I paused. Like, yeah, you did. It's called integration. It's called now. You've learned a bunch of stuff. It needs time to integrate. You can't integrate fully until you have like paused and you thankfully, and I say this, I am very blessed and privileged that I could take that pause. And throughout that pause, oh my gosh, Maria, this is why I switched it. You know, it wasn't just confidence coaching anymore. It was a leadership identity, because I was like, so why am I seeing myself as less than when I'm actually integrating so much that's happening in my life and seeing the depthness of first my identity has to go first and then the energy follows. And I didn't know that before, where before it was like I just do it, I just do it, I just do it. No, it's not that. The moment you take the time to visualize and to really get into the identity and the habits of that next version of you, then everything else shifts. Everything else shifts. And I had to learn that. I will say the hard way, because that is not for girl. I've been working since I was 12. So stopping was not for me, but it helped me learn. I was like, oh, I'm somebody that comes in and I have to integrate all the learning lessons and then I can teach it, because I feel it in my body. If I teach something that I haven't gone through, I can't do it. I can't do it.
So somebody watching this right now thinking, I want to learn more about getting confident at work, either because they're looking for another job or they're constantly being, overlooked for a promotion, or even they're just coming to the end of a career cycle and looking at reinventing themselves. How can they find you, Nancy?
They can find me. Well, I'm on LinkedIn as Nancy Haynes. Obviously, we're here. But they can also find me on Instagram. They can find me Nancy Haynes _coaching. They can go to the website and get some information there on nancyhaynes.com. Get some info of what's in there. We've got the podcast, The Art of Being You. So there's so many ways for them to connect. For some people, they're, if financially they're like, I can't do that right now, go to the podcast, get some insight, get some stuff so that you get a feel of the style, because I feel like it's important for you to also understand a style of every coach. It's very different, the way that I work versus somebody else. And I feel like if I don't connect with you, let you listen to the podcast and you're like, oh, she's not for me. Totally cool. Go find somebody, but find somebody. But
I love it.
Yeah, if you can do that, then that's perfectly fine.
So Nancy, I just put here in the comment, find Nancy here on LinkedIn, and I've tagged you. So anyone watching this wanting to reach out to Nancy, she's got a podcast. You can find her on her website. But I say if you're on LinkedIn and you want to connect with her, this is the perfect place to do that. Thank you so much, Nancy, for being with me. I know we really dabbled into lots of different parts. Would you say, just as we're saying goodbye, that a young person beginning their career right now, confidence is a wait for later or do it before you get started? Where should they put it on their list of priorities?
I would say you got to do it before you get started.
I love that.
The impact that it has, the impact that it'll have for you, the decisions that you make will be totally different. Totally.
Nancy, I need to bring you back for another conversation very soon, and I'd like to talk about how, and I apologize to any of our male audience, but we definitely have to talk about some of the topics women don't talk enough about, and that's women and confidence in the workplace. I've seen colleagues, friends, strangers in a room always asking the same question. How do I do this? Or, who do I need to do this? And I'm always saying, women, don't wait for permission, just do it. But then I realize, I think that comes with two traits with me. One, I'm a middle child, and as a middle child, you're constantly rebellious and, breaking all the rules. I think it's just one of my natural middle child traits. But two, I think that confidence, again, I know we talked about the complexities of it, but I think for women that don't wait for permission, I think it's not confidence that you learn in a classroom. It's confidence you've learned by breaking some of the rules and then just doing it anyway. And then there's also the socialization process where many women are taught to wait their turn or wait for permission. So we need to have another conversation on women, permission, and confidence in the workplace, and I hope we get to do that really, really soon. And that is it for now. If you are watching the replay here on LinkedIn and you had a question and didn't have a chance to ask us, please put it in the comments box, and I'll be sure to ask Nancy to answer it for us. And if you're here live and you have a question, you got a couple of seconds to get it in. Otherwise, we will ask Nancy to answer that for you in the near future. Thank you, Nancy, for being here, and thank you everybody for watching on YouTube. Thank you, Nancy. Thank you for watching on YouTube, on LinkedIn. We didn't go to Instagram today because my tech skills are lagging after recovering from my flu. So we will leave it at here for now. Thank you everybody for watching, and we will see you soon.